Oh, week 7. Where to begin? The Cincinnati Bengals hosted the Cleveland Browns on Sunday, and while it looked like Cincinnati was maybe getting close to putting things back on the right track, the old demons came back and just happened to make their unwelcomed appearance at Paul Brown Stadium. I'm Anthony Cosenza with CincyJungle.com and the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast. Happy to have all of you with me as we go over a little bit of what happened in the game, a little bit of what happened outside of the game shortly after it finished, and everything in between. You know, normally I take about 25, 30 minutes or so talking about the game in these post-game shows. I don't know that I'm going to take that long. Maybe I will. But it's just so much more of the same, guys and gals. It is so much more of the same. And what else can you really say at this point other than Zach Taylor is 3-19-1 as the Bengals head coach? The Bengals since 2019 when he took over the team, they are 1-12-1 in one-score games. And today was no different as they let a win go through their fingers. See, catch the pun there. 37-34. Cleveland sweeps the Bengals on their home turf in the final seconds of the game when the Bengals had the lead. We've got a lot of questions, a lot of, should they trade this guy? I'm seeing a bunch. First of all, I appreciate all those. We do try and have a listener questions live show on Fridays where we try to address a lot of those. I do address some of these on the post game, but I don't know that I'll get to too many of those, but I will try. I mean, I'm already seeing one right here from Mark Jenkins. Do you think the Bengals should trade William Jackson? William Jackson isn't really the problem, guys. William Jackson didn't even play today. And we probably would not be having this conversation, especially with Odell Beckham Jr. going out at the very, very beginning of the game. We probably would not be having this conversation had William Jackson played in this game. You didn't have Joe Mixon, and we'll talk about the offensive lineman as well. That was just a ridiculous situation that the Bengals had to deal with up front today. There's a lot of things in play and a lot of injuries that play into the result today. But that's not an excuse. That's not an excuse for yet another collapse. Another collapse where the Bengals had the lead late. Joe Burrow marches down the field, puts forth a gutsy go-ahead drive with under 2 minutes. Got him down there in the 2 minute under the 2 minute warning. Got the ball into the end zone on a 4th and goal, or a 4th down rather, and it baffles how this team cannot step up, particularly the defense, how this team cannot step up and close out a game. Last week, it was a little bit on Burrow. I mean, it was on a lot of guys. He threw that late pick last week against the Colts, but, there were a lot of different instances in that game that you could point to, probably even this one as well. But, look, 34 points on your home field, 400 yards passing, 3 touchdowns. Quarterback did a lot today. Your rookie quarterback did a lot today to win you the game, and it's a game you most definitely should have had. I'm going to share my screen on a couple of different things going on, as well as the tail of the tape, and we'll go through a lot of different stats and interesting facets of the game, at least ones that I find particularly interesting. Hopefully you do as well. Again, I'm Anthony Cosenza with Cincy Jungle, the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast, and whether you're catching us maybe on your way home from the stadium, hopefully you had fun with that. A little bit more fans allowed in that stadium. I guess there was about 9,000 plus or so of 11,000, whether you're catching us after the fact, or maybe you're at home, or you're walking around and catching us on your phone or your tablet or something like that. Happy to have you with us. We have a number of different shows. We do this post-game show on Sundays. We do the pregame show by Narragansett Beer. We did that earlier today, Matt Minnick, myself, and John Sheeran. So hopefully you have fun kind of talking some Bengals as we go up to kickoff there. We do a Monday news jumps where we get you going through all the headlines between the Cincinnati Bengals and the NFL. So we'll be doing that tomorrow. We do our Wednesday deep analysis show with myself and John Sheeran. And then we do listener questions live almost every Friday. of the month. Usually about 3 Fridays of the month, we do listener questions live. So join us for that and have your questions submitted on air. So I am going to share some things, folks. And unfortunately, I'm not going to start with statistics. Well, I guess in a way I am going to start with some statistics. And these are ones that I think we know by now. And I mentioned some. This is from our good friend Vance Meek, a popular Bengals follow. Zach Taylor now 1-12-1 in close games, and they're 1-3-1 in games where they had a fourth quarter lead this season, and he chalks that up to coaching. I think a lot of people have agreements with that. And I'm going to just, if you wouldn't mind me stroking my ego a little bit by sharing a tweet I had. In 6 career games, guys, against the Cincinnati Bengals, Baker Mayfield is 5-1 with 17 touchdown passes. He had 5 touchdown passes today. 5. Unbelievable. 3 of which, by the way, we can talk about the Cincinnati Bengals defense, their problems, and there are a lot of them, and we will talk about that. But before Lou Anarumo got here, before even Marvin Lewis got here, covering tight ends and covering running backs that can catch the football has been a bane of the Bengals' existence. For as long as I can remember covering the team and watching them as a fan, that has been a major, major issue with the Cincinnati Bengals defense. And guess what? Today, 4 of Baker's touchdown passes went to tight ends and running backs. 3 to tight ends, 2 to rookie Harrison Bryant, 1 to David Njoku, who is disgruntled himself, and of course 1 to Kareem Hunt. And then he had the final one at the end there to Peoples-Jones for the game winner. So 5 touchdowns, 4 of which went to tight ends and running backs. That's an issue, and it remains an issue. The Bengals tried to address that with a lot of different acquisitions in the draft and free agency, and it still isn't being cured. Still is not being cured. We'll show you some more numbers in a minute. Before we do, friends, I got to share something that came up. I'm sure a lot of you have seen this, and this is part of the reason why I ended up taking the air a little bit later than I had hoped for today. Something occurred at the very end of the game and shortly after the game with a very disgruntled Bengals veteran, a guy who should be, by all accounts, in their ring of honor if they ever make one, a guy whose jersey probably could or should be retired based on what he has done. He is 2 sacks away from the franchise all-time record. There's rumors now that he will be traded, and if you see here, I'm sharing a Twitter screen, a tweet from Carlos Dunlap. Approximately 6,000 square foot city view with huge balcony, 4-bedroom, 4.5 bath in one of the best school districts for sale. Do your market analysis and make me an offer. Serious inquiries only with proof of funds. Owner is willing to sell furnished or unfurnished. This, folks, was sent. It shows 1:41 p.m. because I'm on Pacific time, guys. But 4:41 p.m. Do your math on how shortly after the game that was that Carlos Dunlap decided to send that out. Before he sent this out, he decided to get in a shouting match with a coach on the sideline, and that was caught on camera, and this situation just continues to get uglier and uglier. We're going to talk more about this, John and I will, on Wednesday night, the Carlos Dunlap situation. Chances are there is a strong possibility that Carlos Dunlap may not even be on this team in one form or another by the time Wednesday rolls around when we talk about it. Albert Breer reported he's on the trade block. What you can get for a guy like this at this point, I don't know. Maybe even a cut is a situation that the Bengals look at here. But this is a situation spiraling out of control. Absolutely spiraling out of control. And people have their thoughts. And really, quite frankly, just to kind of give you my mile-high opinion of it at this point in time, this is a two-sided issue that's happening here. Carlos is not really going about this in a way that when he went to Instagram the other day, he's talking about he needs to communicate better. He needs to do this. And he put the onus on himself, which I found to be, a bit professional. And he didn't really blast openly the team or anything like that. But this kind of stuff immediately following a game, I understand you're frustrated, probably want out of the franchise. Not the best look by 96 there, in my opinion, but also he probably has a right to be frustrated. This guy has seen a lot of frustrating, ridiculous losses in his career. He has worked with head coaches who cannot get them over the hump and or win critical games that need to be won. So obviously there's a communication issue from Carlos and the coaching staff, a two-way issue there, in my opinion. Some people side with Carlos, some people side with the coaching staff and organization on this one. The bottom line is this, folks. Carlos Dunlap is the latest in a relatively long line of star players that have been disgruntled with this franchise and how it's run, whether it's the coaching staff, whether it's ownership, what have you. This goes back all the way to Paul Brown days, Lamar Parrish. You can go into the 90s, Carl Pickens, Corey Dillon. When this team was not winning, Carl Pickens, Corey Dillon. You can even say Chad Johnson was disgruntled at times. Carson Palmer forced his way out of this team. You could say Takeo Spikes didn't want to stay once free agent. He didn't force his way out, but when he was a free agent, he said bye-bye. By the way, we have an interview with him, and he talked about that. So check that one out in our archives, if you will. Dunlap's just kind of the next in line here. There's probably a lot of others I'm not mentioning here, but those are kind of ones that come top to mind. And this is not something that's new with the Cincinnati Bengals. So you can blame the coaching staff. You can blame the player. The bottom line is this organization is not winning, and this organization can't find ways to win the big games. They've caught lightning in a bottle a handful of years in its entire existence, talking 81, 88, 2005, 2015, and some nice playoff years aside from that. But this organization obviously has its shortcomings, and unfortunately, it comes to a head in the form of what Carlos is putting out there in public. So I didn't really want to talk about that, and maybe we will take the entire 25, 30 minutes that I said we would not. But with this, I had to let you know that Carlos Dunlap put that out there. And, I think a lot of you probably have seen that at this point, maybe even watched his Instagram video that he did earlier in the week. But this is getting very, very out of control, and a situation that Zach Taylor needs to get under control. And unfortunately, how much clout does Zach Taylor, Lou Anarumo and company, how much clout do they have right now? Right? 3 wins in a year and a half of football. 3 wins and a tie. 3.5 wins, I guess. And not only that, this team, I said this, I think, last week. Imagine you're now 1-12-1. Imagine if the team of those 14 games, imagine if over the last couple of years, they won 7 of those. They were 7-7. Yeah, you may not have gotten Burrow last year. I understand that, just kind of that argument. But my point is, you could have built something a bit more foundationally sound under Zach Taylor if you're able to do that last year. And especially if you're winning those, God, what is it, 4 games now already this year that you lost or tied that are one-possession games. If you won half, 2 or 3 of those, you're in the playoff picture with a rookie quarterback and feeling pretty good about things. This team, I said this when Marvin Lewis was head coach, and I guess I can say it now with Zach Taylor. A team often takes on the personality or the traits of its head coach or the coaching staff, meaning that if you have a head coach who is confident, who is prepared, who is really obsessed with the game and obsessed with winning, that's infectious in a locker room, especially in a locker room with so many different players and so many different personalities. That becomes infectious. I'm not saying Zach Taylor doesn't want to win. I don't really know about his preparation process and all of that. I don't see day to day. I don't hear day to day. I assume he works hard. I've heard he works hard. A lot of players are vouching for him, but at this point, 3 wins is 3 wins. 3 wins and a tie is 3 wins and a tie. And that is not getting it done. I've said also that I don't really like advocating for people to publicly to lose their jobs, especially with all kinds of wackiness that's happening in the world right now with employment and all kinds of stuff. And I still don't want to sit here and say, this guy should be fired, that guy should be fired, get him out of here. I don't like to use this platform for that. I will say I will find it very shocking if there is not some significant type of move made after this game, though. This one not only cut pretty deep because of the way you lose, but to the team you lost to on your home turf. Leading up to this week, I said a bunch of times that I think that the Cleveland Browns, that game just means more to the Brown family based on the history there. Paul Brown getting ousted out of there in the 60s and what transpired since. And I mean, they've publicly said it. They have a special, I guess, hatred in their heart for the Cleveland Browns. And when you lose a game like this, you get swept by the Cleveland Browns. Baker Mayfield 5-1 against the Bengals. Baker Mayfield, former number 1 pick, sweeps Joe Burrow, number 1 pick. Granted, he's a rookie, I get it, but I don't think that sits well with ownership. And I was thinking back again today. You look back to the closing of second halves, the closing of games, Lou Anarumo's defense absolutely just collapses. Lets up at a minimum a field goal or critical touchdowns. And they did it twice today. They did it twice in a matter of minutes, game minutes today. They let up 2 touchdowns. You can't have it. You can't have it. And I don't know if it's Lou Anarumo. I don't know if it's also because he's passed along play calling duties as well to Al Golden, the linebackers coach. If it's both of them, it's not working. And I know they've suffered a lot of injuries on that defense. I know. And I know you've got Carlos Dunlap, who is very, very disappointed and angry about his role. I know you've got Geno Atkins, who's like MIA. Where's he at? You've got him. You don't have Trey Waynes. You lost DJ Reader for the year. Mike Daniels is just coming back. You've got a lot of issues. I get it. But, these schemes aren't working. You're putting Von Bell in situations that are not of his strength, largely being in man coverage against athletic, huge tight ends. He let up at least 2, if not 3, of the touchdowns today in coverage. I know. I thought all 3 were in man coverage. I'd have to go back and look, but I know at least 2 he was man-to-man, and that's just not drawing up the right schemes. That's not what you want for Von Bell, and supposedly we're going to have Sean Williams and Von Bell out there at the same time and mixing up all these looks and doing all these things, and it's just they're not really doing that on that side of the ball. They're not getting pressure. I know you also don't have Sam Hubbard. What I don't want is to see this organization use excuses that we've seen before in terms of injuries and all of that to say, hey, we'll be better next year. It seems as if that's been the broken record theme over the past couple of years. We'll be better next year. We'll be better next year. We'll be healthier. You get significant injuries every single year. And it's up to your coaching staff to be able to prepare in the wake of those losses, to be able to win games in the wake of those personnel losses, and really to try and not skip too much of a beat, even though some of these guys are your star players, you're heavily relied upon players. And this coaching staff isn't really doing that. Well, here I say we're not going to go that long, and we're already at like 20 minutes almost, but we're going to get to the tail of the tape and some other things in just a second. But I guess we will take our full allotted time that we have here. Thanks for joining us. I'm Anthony Cosenza with CincyJungle.com and the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast. We've got a ton of live listeners. This is awesome. Happy to have you guys with us. Despite the circumstances, it's great having all of you watching and checking out the show. Appreciate it. We appreciate all the support and not only for the post-game show, the Orange and Black Insider, but also Ace and Zim's Orange is the New Black podcast and New Stripe City channel, as well as Matt Minnick and all of his Chalk Talk episodes that's on our channels there too. So I appreciate the support. I know sometimes it may not be easy talking and listening about the Cincinnati Bengals when things aren't really going their way. And today, guys and gals, today sucked. That end result sucked because I actually felt that this was a critical game, not only really for the Bengals maybe to salvage their season, but also for Taylor and company to salvage their reputation. Even if they were to win 34-31 and it was a barely win. You could spin that and say, look, I mean, they lost. By the way, I'll share this right now, I suppose. They lost 3 starting offensive linemen in the game. Joe Burrow threw for 400 yards, played well, and you could kind of spin that positively, and you would beat a then 4-2 team, and you feel pretty good about winning a team with a winning record, beating a team with a winning record at that point, and just didn't happen. Bobby Hart, we were trying to get more information. Trey Hopkins left the game with a concussion. We know that. Jonah Williams left the game with a neck issue. That happened very shortly after the Myles Garrett play where he beat the heck out of Jonah Williams and strip sacked Joe Burrow. So we have to see what happens there. That's not promising. Jonah Williams had really been playing pretty well up to that point. So those two guys were out for a majority of the game, and then Bobby Hart left late in the game. Hakeem Adeniji came in and played, and you had essentially what was 4 backups and a guy. If you look at the lineup here on CincyJungle.com, 4 kind of true backups or guys that were backups that are forced into starting roles because of injury and other issues, and one guy who's barely clinging on to his original starting spot based on up and down play, and that would be Michael Jordan. So you had Fred Johnson at left tackle. He had a false start. Billy Price had some snapping issues and a penalty. Alex Redmond, pretty quiet day from his part. So I think he played relatively well, but he is technically a backup. They wanted Suafilo at that spot. And then, of course, you had Adeniji coming in at right tackle at the end of the game for Bobby Hart. So not good there. One piece of good news before we go into the tail of the tape, I'm going to share this. This came across the news wire before kickoff, and it's one that may have been a bit predictable, but the Bengals are hosting Quinton Spain, guard, a guy who is essentially one of the best available guys out there for interior offensive line in terms of options left. So we kind of thought that this was maybe going to be a possibility. I would think that he would potentially sign at this point with Cincinnati. I think there's mutual interest. It's just a matter of, if they do get that deal done, does he go to left guard? Does he go to right guard, which is kind of what his more natural spot is? He goes to right guard. And then what happens at left guard when Suafilo returns, which should be probably right after the bye. So interesting stuff there, but at least some good news for the Cincinnati Bengals as they try and recover from this one. So let's just take a brief look. I think we all know at least some of the stats at this point, but let's take a look at some things. These are your statistics for the Cincinnati Bengals. Burrow with really an incredible day aside from that. I hate to call it a rookie mistake, but a play in the end zone he would have loved to have back. And really, if you kind of look at the score again, that kind of makes a difference there. If the Bengals get any semblance of points, we may be talking about a different result. But again, shoulda, woulda, coulda, and a number of that was, there were many, many other issues besides that red zone interception, and he more than atoned with it with 4 touchdowns of his own, 3 through the air, 406 yards, 35 of 47, 34 yards rushing and a touchdown. The great one was the call on 3rd down in the 4th quarter on the go-ahead drive where he audibled into a quarterback draw where he scooted forward for about 10 yards and a first down. So that was pretty awesome. Giovanni Bernard, I can't say enough about this guy. You look, the stat line does not tell the tale, guys. 13 carries, 37 yards, rough day on the ground. We figured that was probably going to be the case, 2.8 yards per carry. But if you look at the other things, the great catch on the touchdown, that was not a great throw by Burrow. It was a great play call. It was a great, sell by Burrow. But the throw was a difficult one for Bernard to catch, and he caught it on 4th and goal, got into the end zone for the lead, got the touchdown. We'll scoot down here. You see the 5 catches for 59 yards on 5 targets, caught everything thrown his way. The other thing, boys and girls, Giovanni Bernard and pass protection just remains to be something that is just so valued. There was one specific instance where they showed it on the replay where he picked up a blitz. There were others that maybe you didn't see close up, but he just is you can kind of see why he's a captain. You can see why he's a valuable guy. And some people are like, well, why are you paying 2 running backs like that? This guy just does everything. And he doesn't always get the touches and the carries because of Joe Mixon, but he just does everything and he does it well. And he even had a nice little return at the end of the game there to make it a little interesting with 4 seconds to play, he got him in pretty good field position on a kick return. So, kudos to Gio Bernard. Tip of the cap to him. He played very, very well, and a guy that I just continue to be impressed with. Tyler Boyd, 1 of 1. Interestingly, he threw a pass. It was a pretty cool little play. It was a little trick play, and then the Bengals right after that went to a jet sweep. So it was just kind of trick play after trick play. I think they were trying to really shell game what was going on their offensive line and trying to do different things. So Tyler Boyd just with another outstanding day today. T. Higgins with another great day here. You can see the 7-yard run from T. And then, of course, Tyler Boyd, 11 catches, 101 yards, and a touchdown on 13 targets. Decent day from A.J. Green, back-to-back weeks, 7 catches, 82 yards. Still the 13 targets. There were a couple there that you just you wish that he had. And you kind of feel like a couple of those were maybe ones that could the old A.J. have had that? Could A.J. from 2016, 2015 have had that catch? I don't know. But coming off of what's essentially, I think about 180 or so yards over the last couple of games. So 190 yards or so over the last couple of games. So good couple of weeks by A.J. Green, productive couple of weeks from A.J. Green. T. Higgins, 5 catches, 71 yards, and the great yards after the catch touchdown that he had. He is emerging as a big-time threat for this team. I mentioned Gio, 5 for 59 in the passing game. Mike Thomas had a couple of nice catches. Did have a bobble in a drop on one play that was disappointing, but came up with a couple of nice plays in this game. Drew Sample, a nice game today. Did have the one ball knocked away in the end zone, very reminiscent of maybe another, but this one was. I felt that there might have been some pass interference on that one. 5 catches, 52 yards. Stepped up pretty big this week. I thought he played pretty nice. 5 catches on six targets there. There are some instances with Joe Burrow where you wish, the awareness potentially of some back end pressure that, unfortunately it's difficult to see. You can't have eyes in the back of your head, but some quarterbacks just learn to feel that pressure. A couple of times today he did not, and one of which was that Myles Garrett strip sack from behind. There was another one where he almost got the ball knocked away from him while they were driving to score. He fumbled the ball 3 times today. Luckily only lost one of them. So, Darius Phillips with an interception, a great one to begin the game. But Darius Phillips at the end, a couple of big completions, including the ball going right through his hands for the game-winning touchdown. A ridiculous catch by Peoples-Jones in the end zone there. But again, Phillips, I gave him credit at the beginning of the game. He was a guy who called passive-aggressively called some of the coaching staff and whatever out on social media, and came up right away with an interception, but then ended up playing not great football at the end there. If you're gonna put that stuff out there, you got to be able to walk the walk as well. And he only kind of partially did it with that interception. It was a great play. The interception was a great play, but there were other completions. And look, I know he's still a young player. I know he's getting snaps, and I know he's getting starter snaps for really kind of the first time. He had some last year, and then he's had some this year, but this is just kind of who he is. And I don't know that he is at this point, a viable number 1, number 2 corner for a team, even though he may still be ascending as a player. It's just too up and down. It's too up and down. He needs to get a little bit more consistent, and it's not just so big play, let up a big play, big play, let up a big play. He's got to find some consistency there. Cincinnati did okay. Against the run, sort of today. We'll talk more about that. It wasn't absolutely killing him. It was more just Baker Mayfield making plays, being very accurate, and Baker Mayfield doing what he does against the Bengals. 17 touchdowns in 6 games. 17 touchdown passes in 6 games. That's just crazy. Josh Bynes, leading tackler. You can see here a lot of hits on Baker, or some hits on Baker, but look, goose egg all the way down the sack column. Can't win a game if you don't bring down the quarterback at least once. At least not usually you can't. Randy Bullock, perfect on the day, 4 extra points, 2 field goals. Not much from the return game. I did mention the one from Gio. And then, an 11-yard return from Alex Erickson. So nothing really there. Brandon Wilson not really looking like the same returner from a year ago. Look at Baker Mayfield, 22 of 28. There was a point where he hit 18. He might have even gone beyond that, but he set a franchise record for 18 straight completions against the Cincinnati Bengals. 22 completions for 297 yards, 5 touchdowns. Unbelievable. Kareem Hunt, you can see here as a team, they were under 100 yards. I mean, that was manageable. And that was kind of one of the things that the Bengals wanted to do. They wanted to be able to stop the run and force Baker to beat him. And to Baker's credit, he did. But, Lou Anarumo, Al Golden, and company kind of gave him the assist, I think. And they're not finding ways to generate pressure up front. They're not finding ways to come up in clutch situations. And I feel like a broken record because I feel like I say that every single week. But it bears repeating. You can see here the numbers. Rashard Higgins, 6 catches, 110 yards. Big game from him. Caught all 6 targets. He just seemed to be open in the middle of the field all day long. Harrison Bryant, 4 catches, 56 yards, and 2 touchdowns on 5 targets. Talk about a day. Donovan Peoples-Jones, the game-winning touchdown, 3 catches, 56 yards on 3. He caught all 3 targets. By the way, those were his first career catches. So a career day from Harrison Bryant, given up by the Cincinnati Bengals, and first career catches and touchdowns by Donovan Peoples-Jones. So that's fun. Jarvis Landry, not much of a factor. And then, of course, Odell Beckham Jr. left on that interception with a knee injury. It did not return. David Njoku was the other guy who had the other tight end who had a receiving touchdown, as did Kareem Hunt out of the backfield. Not too big of you see Myles Garrett. They got to Burrow a couple of times, but you see Myles Garrett here with the 2 sacks. Big game from him. Half a sack from Sheldon Richardson, 1 from Ronnie Harrison on a blitz, and then Kevin Johnson shared that one with Richardson. So 4 sacks of Burrow. And I think again there were a couple where Burrow was kind of extending a play, rolling out to try and find some guys. And I think you would find that maybe a couple of those are on Burrow, but for the most part, the rest is kind of par for the course. So we can talk more about some of this stuff, and I got to get out of here in a couple minutes because I know we're going long, but if you look here, this is what I'm talking about. Bengals get the ball back. When did they start this drive here? Bengals get the ball back with 4:53 to play, meaning the last touchdown, the Kareem Hunt touchdown that the Bengals surrendered, was under 5 minutes to play. Bengals got the ball, marched all the way down. You can see how long this drive was, and they scored with just over a minute to play. Minute 6. So in less than 5 game minutes, Lou Anarumo's defense let up 2 game-leading fourth quarter touchdowns. Inexplicable. And this, the Bengals were the ones at halftime, I believe, that, so they scored. They were the ones who scored the touchdown right before the half. Usually they are on the recipient. They're the recipients of that. You can see with like 21 seconds left, they scored the Tyler Boyd touchdown. But even so, even right before that, a touchdown was given up again, right? It's not right before the half, but it's shortly before. You can see, I think 3:42. So, they were just giving up points right before the conclusions of, both halves. It's unfortunately some of the other stats haven't been compiled yet. I like to look at the team stats in terms of third down conversions and all of that. That hasn't been fully compiled yet on NFL.com, but that's kind of the tail of the tape, folks. I feel like every time they lose a game, my show should be called I don't know. Because in these last few years, these last couple of years, and really this year, I'm out of answers. And the way they are losing games is just unbelievable. It's unbelievable. You look at, I was going through again on my ride home. I was going through again, week 1, Game-winning touchdown called back by a penalty, game-tying field goal miss. You lose. Week 2 against Cleveland, Bengals were kind of playing catch-up that entire game. Got it within 1 score. Burrow played his butt off in that game. Okay, you kind of say, well, that was kind of meant to be a loss, but still a 1-possession game, a game that was in reach. Okay, fine. Next week, you have the lead, touchdown lead, with less than two minutes to play to the Eagles. You surrender it, you end up tying that game. Week 4, you beat Jacksonville, you get shellacked by Baltimore, and then last week you had a lead again. You had a 21-point lead at one point. You give that up. You're driving for the game-winning score at the end there. Burrow throws the interception at the very end of the game to ice that one. And then this one, you have a game-winning touchdown, which should be a game-winning touchdown with 1:06 to play. And Cleveland needs a field goal to tie. They throw a dime touchdown and win the game with 11 seconds left. And this is an interesting question here. Big Jim Slade. Who would you want to be a defensive coordinator under Zach if we do get rid of Lou? I think the question also pertains, if for those of you who are saying get rid of Zach, get rid of Lou Anarumo, who are you going to get right now? Who's going to fill in? Brian Callahan, a guy who hasn't even really been calling plays. He's created the offense with Zach, but he's not calling plays. You want him to run the team? You want Lou Anarumo if Zach's the guy that gets the axe? You want Lou Anarumo running the team? I mean, the only real replacement for an interim head coach that makes any sense is Darren Simmons, a guy that they interviewed anyway when Zach Taylor was interviewed. So, it's kind of like, let's get rid of these guys. Who are you going to? I mean, I know it can't be much worse than what we're seeing, I guess, in terms of wins and losses. But who are you going to get, at least for right now? Maybe that's not of primary concern, but someone's got to run the team. Someone's got to keep this team together if you're going to get rid of some of these figureheads and these coaches. I don't know what the best answer is, but, who would you want to be a defensive coordinator under Zach if we get rid of Lou? Big Jim, my entire thing with this, I liked the Zach Taylor hire from the get-go because it showed progressiveness from the team that is usually just incredibly slow-moving to change and incredibly conservative, and sometimes that's a good thing. But, we saw what we saw under Marvin and the regression that was taking place, and it was a move that was going to be really risky one way or the other. But I wanted from the get-go, I wanted an experience because Zach was inexperienced. He was potentially bringing in an exciting offensive coordinator that may have been inexperienced himself. I wanted an experienced defensive coordinator, preferably one that has some NFL head coaching experience. That's why Dennis Allen's name was kicked around. That's why Jack Del Rio's name was kicked around. That's why Dom Capers' name was kicked around when Zach first took this job. And I would have been fine with all of that. Some people may say, oh, well, that's the guy that's going to be breathing down Zach's neck to take his job. No, that's a guy that can bring knowledge and experience to an inexperienced staff and kind of level everybody out. Instead, what you have are guys still learning on the fly on their job right now, including Zach Taylor. You have all new guys, really, except for Darren Simmons. A lot of new guys. And maybe that gives these guys a pass for some of these records and issues we're seeing on the field. Maybe it doesn't for some of you. But, that if there's a move to be made, at least, I don't know what you can do at this point in time. You basically have to promote from within. If you're going to fire one of these guys, you have to promote from within. But, long term, starting next year, I would prefer experience on this staff and someone with a track record of success. Whether they struggled as a head coach but have been very successful as a defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator, what have you, or maybe they were a former successful head coach that is looking to get back into things and will take a coordinator position for the time being, and maybe that keeps Taylor's seat a bit more hot. And I don't know. I don't know how hot Zach Taylor's seat is right now. I tend to think that it would be pretty hot after, just because of, again, the opponent you lost to, the way you lost to him on your home stadium. I don't see this loss sitting well with the Brown family. I don't. Now, things could turn around if somehow the Bengals end up beating the Titans this coming week. I've seen a lot of Bengals football, and I kind of know what the song and dance is that's going to be coming. They're going to probably go into the bye at 1-6-1, and they're going to come out of it with a very soft back schedule, probably get to, 5-10-1, 6-9-1, whatever. Rattle off a couple of wins when you're already out of the playoff hunt against soft teams, and that's what they're going to put the feather in the cap with going into 21. I've seen that before. I hate to be cynical, I hate to be negative, but I've seen that before, and that's kind of what I'm preparing for at this point. And if that makes me negative and that turns people off from listening to me or whatever, I'm sorry, but I've seen a lot of Bengals football, and I've seen how this team operates, and I can just see that one coming. I can see that one coming. But they've surprised me at times. They surprised me with this free agency period this offseason. They surprised me with the Zach Taylor hiring. And those were, for the most part at the time, they were two positives that I was very excited about. So I could be wrong, but I that's what I'm preparing for, because I have seen that happen with this team quite frequently. And I don't know that this team can really afford to, if that does play out that way, I don't know that this team can afford to continue to go down this route and have things comprised as they are, the game plans be what they are. It's not working. It's not working, obviously. I mean, it's just not working. And today was no exception. And I wish on some level, it's surprising anytime a team is able to win a game the way the Browns won that game against the Bengals. But it's almost like we've become accustomed to these types of losses, and that's just really should be unacceptable. If you're management, and whatever you see fit as to how to change that, whether it's coaching changes, whether it's personnel changes, making trades for some of these disgruntled guys, and maybe picking up some draft picks and trying to rebuild for next year or what have you. I don't know. Maybe a combination of all of it, but this should not be accepted. And the way in losing games and the way in losing games against division rivals just should not be accepted. This was a pivotal game in this season. I feel like I've said that a bunch of times this year already, but this was a pivotal game for the trajectory of the season and for kind of feelings about the Zach Taylor era, where it's heading, and pivotal game for, potential job security for some of these guys on this team. I don't know if Mike Brown's going to pull the trigger on doing some things. They did this a couple of years ago. If you remember, Terrell Austin didn't even make it through one season. The team was so historically bad on defense. Now they're not giving up the amount of yards and all that kind of stuff under Lou Anarumo, but it's almost like worse. They're just absolutely collapsing in these critical moments in games that could and should be won. That's almost worse. That's all I got for you guys. Again, check out our show. Check out all of our podcasts on cincyjungle.com. Wherever you get all of your audio podcasts on your favorite platform, get it there. We're on YouTube. I think it's over by my left shoulder. There's a little icon to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please do that. Check out the other podcasts as well. We're bringing you a lot of different content on the podcast side. We will be having Mike Daniels, by the way, on our podcast coming up pretty soon here. Should be in the next couple of weeks. We're ironing that out with his camp. So if you didn't check the interview out the first time we had him on the program, very entertaining guy. We will be having him on as well. So check that out and get all of your news, opinions, analysis, all of that on cincyjungle.com. Appreciate you all tuning in. We had a lot of different live viewers. That's awesome. And thanks for downloading after the fact. Hang in there. Hopefully things will be getting